Budget mechanical keyboards are an important segment of the market as mechanical keyboards can be very expensive. And as the market grows, the options grow, and we start to see less normal form factors become more accessible. So today we check out one of those options, and this is the MantisTek GK3-61 Bluetooth mechanical keyboard. Opening up the box and we have the keyboard itself, we have a small user manual and warranty card, and finally in the back we get a micro USB cable. So here's the keyboard and first impressions in the hands, and it's decent taking into consideration that it is a plastic case. There's minimal flex as it has an internal steel plate and of course it's small size, and it comes in at about 570 grams, which is about the same as the AND Pro 60% keyboard. As this is a budget 60% keyboard, naturally we're going to draw a lot of comparisons to the AND Pro, so that will be scattered throughout the video. As said, this does have a plastic enclosure which only comes in black. One of the cool things about the AND Pro was that it came in several colors, like my yellow one here. The case is very simplistic with a typical 60% plastic case design, having minimal bezels, being high profile so that the key switches are hidden away, and it has a slight natural inclination to it as it does not have any flip up feet. The finish of the plastic on the sides is quite smooth and has a kind of satin finish that has a sheen, and it kinda does pick up fingerprints, but it's not bad, although the rim of the case is in this glossy finish which I personally don't like. It just makes the plastic look cheaper and unrefined in my opinion. But then on the bottom we have a more traditional rougher textured plastic finish which looks better in my opinion and just feels better, so I'd wish they'd gone with that all over. Also on the bottom we have our 4 flat rubber feet for non-slip, and we also get an on-off switch, which is something the AND Pro did not have. And finally on the rear we have our micro USB port. Back to the top, and this is of course a 60% keyboard, so it is basically the main area of your keyboard with 61 keys. So in order to squeeze in all the other keys and functionality, we have layers. On the top layer we have what you see, which of course are the most used keys with the alphas, numbers and modifiers. However, one key distinction that MantisTek goes with are that these keys here are the arrow keys. And this is on the default layer, whereas usually they're on the secondary layer. Although we can switch between the arrow keys or the normal keys by pressing FN plus right shift, and then it will be more like a standard 60%. Now this is where it gets messy. As we can see, there are basically 3 functions on this key here. We have the up arrow, / and the question mark, but there are only 2 layers. So to use the / we press FN plus /, but to use the question mark we press left shift, FN and question mark. And yes, that is the left shift, not the right, which is such an awkward combo to execute. However, after updating the firmware, which is a necessity to install the software, this is fixed by now having the right shift plus question mark being the new combo. Another perspective is for new 60% users. Not having dedicated arrow keys can be a pretty bad thing for some people, that includes myself. I really do love my dedicated arrow keys, and is one of the main reasons why I avoid using 60% keyboards and prefer something like 65%. So I actually quite enjoyed having the arrow keys there, but this is something you can pretty much do on all 60% keyboards through their programming. As for the other keys, we have the function row on the number row as per usual, and the nav cluster, which consists of insert, home, delete and all that, is all on the right side of the keyboard. We also have our lighting controls, as this is of course an RGB keyboard. So we have brightness up and down, also speed control, and we can change the color of the effect. And to go through all the effects, we press FN and pipe. I'm actually quite impressed with the lighting. It's vibrant and colorful, and it is proper RGB, so the transitions between colors is smooth, unlike some budget boards which have like 5 colors that don't mix. There is desktop software to this keyboard rather than the sketchy phone app that the AN Pro used. However, late last year, MantisTek were caught having a keylogger on their GK2 keyboard, which apparently sent the number of key presses registered on the keyboard rather than actually recording what you type. That still wasn't a cool move regardless of the potential pure intent in perhaps measuring performance. And to download the software, you have to go to the Banggood product page, and it's also not the most legit thing as it's just on Google Drive. But here it is, and it's very standard and self-explanatory. First, we have different profiles for different key layouts, and then here we can customize each key with all these options here. However, it only allows you to customize that top layer. And people who have a 60% or small form factor keyboard know that you do need more than that. There's no real point in customizing that top layer, as for the most part you're going to use the keys as they are, because you're not going to change the letters or the numbers and pretty much anything else. We still of course have our other profiles, but you can only switch to them via the software. And unfortunately that's just a real limitation. You need to be able to at least customize the secondary layer, but if you do like the layout how it is, then I guess it's fine. And of course we have our lighting customization area with all the normal stuff. The keycaps are backlit to allow the light to shine through, and the typeface of font is clean for backlit keycaps. These are also easily replaceable with any MX keycap set, as this does have a completely standard ANSI layout. Taking the keycaps off, and these are ABS plastic and are double shot, so the legends are another piece of plastic, being durable and it will never fade away. MantisTek claim that they are 1.5mm thick, but that's only for the thick part of the rear wall, so they're really just 1mm thick, which is quite thin. And underneath the keycaps, and perhaps the most surprising feature, we have genuine Cherry MX key switches. At this price, you'd expect something like Kale, Otemu or Gateron. I have Cherry MX red key switches in mind, which is a light linear switch, but it is also available in blues for clicky and browns for tactile. It's a solid typing experience with the internal steel plate. The stabilizers are a touch rattly though, which I guess is to be expected, so a bit of lube will help with that. And finally, this is a Bluetooth keyboard which can be useful. To switch to wireless mode, we press FN plus tab, and then to pair it with the device, we press FN plus pipe, and complete the pairing process on your device. Unfortunately, this does not come with a Bluetooth dongle, which the AN Pro does come with, and I don't have Bluetooth on my desktop, so it was always tough for me to use it in wireless mode, so I couldn't really get a good idea on battery life as I kept plugging it in and subsequently charging it. But they do state a 10-hour battery life, however it does have battery saving functions, and I'd imagine it would last quite a bit longer. As for the performance, it was perfectly fine for casual use. When typing fast, I didn't have any missed keystrokes or any noticeable lag. There's always going to be a hint of delay, and perhaps that may be an issue in gaming, but again, I didn't really test that, so my apologies. To take this keyboard apart, we have a couple of screws on the bottom, and if you know 60% boards, this is an immediate sign that it's not normal. And that's because usually a 60% case will have standoffs on the inside bottom of the case. Therefore, this case and PCB are not compatible with all the aftermarket 60% cases that you can get, so that's a bit unfortunate, but it also does have Bluetooth, so you'd run into issues with some metal cases anyway. The case itself is just a simple plastic shell, and we have a 750 mAh battery instead of the claimed 800, which is shielded by a piece of plastic. This is a pretty small battery both in capacity but also physical size, so you can replace this with something bigger as there is a heap of space here. The mounting plate is made from 1.6mm thick steel, and this is what gives the keyboard most of its rigidity and weight. Looking at the PCB, and it's very clean with solid solder joints. We have our RGB SMD LEDs for each key switch, and yeah, there's no standard standoffs. Plus we have the micro USB port right in the middle, so that completely messes up any case compatibility. And while I still have it apart, I thought I might as well give it a quick paint job, because why not? Alright, so it's a mixed bag. It's great to see another budget option for the less common 60% form factor. The build is decent with a standard plastic enclosure and steel internal mounting plate. It does come with genuine Cherry MX key switches, which is good for the price, and the RGB lighting looks great. However, the programmability is lacking without the ability to customize the secondary layer, which I believe to be very important for a 60% keyboard. The PCB and case are not compatible with other products, but that may not really be an issue. And then you have the whole trust thing with their suspect activities in their past, but I think they learned a lot from the backlash that they received. So is it worth it? It is cheaper than an AND Pro, and they're both quite similar, but the AND Pro has Gate-All-Around switches which can be better, and also better customizability. Another seemingly great alternative at the moment, if you do like clicky switches, is the MotoSpeed GK3-61, which is much cheaper and is another wireless 60% keyboard. But this has the even better Box white key switches, which are super clicky and crisp in comparison to blues. So I think you have to think about what you want out of this keyboard, especially with programmability. I feel that the AND Pro is a better board, plus it has a huge user base, but again it is a bit more expensive, and I guess that's just the classic scenario with many products. Thanks again to Banggood.com for providing this keyboard for review and for the continued support. I'll put the links in the description if you want to check it out.